Hey everybody, I'm Kombucha Kev. Before I jump into kegging the kombucha, I wanted to start off with the different Kegerator system components. So first off, the Kegerator. What I use is a Kegerator, which was a 2-tap, but I did an add-on to get this 3rd tap here. So the tower actually has a little bit of an extension on it, which worked out because this fits about 3 corny kegs. The one thing I wanted to call out is a lot of these faucets come as brass chrome plated, but as I mentioned in my previous videos, with kombucha you need something that's 304 stainless steel or better. Anytime a kombucha touches a metal, you want to make sure it's that stainless steel. So I actually swapped these out to be stainless steel, which has been, worked out really well. So of course the Kegerator. We also have the CO2 tank with the regulator. So one thing to call out, this regulator is specifically for CO2. If you want to get into nitrogen, kegging with nitro, you'll need a different type of regulator for that. So this is the CO2 regulator. It has 2 dials on it. One of them has a gauge on how much CO2 is left in the tank. And there's also a gauge for the PSI that you have it set for. Generally, I'll do about 20 PSI the first night, and then the next day I'll do a serving PSI of about 5 to 8 PSI. So I usually run the tank until it's empty, but I'm getting a little low, so I figured for this video I'll show you how to take this off the tank and then how to put it back on. So first thing you do is turn down the PSI. So you'll see that might start to drop a little bit. Then you'll want to turn off the canister to the regulator. So I'm going to close this up. And then lastly, you'll release the CO2 that's in here by pulling this little dial. And then you'll see it goes to 0. So now I can actually take it off with a wrench. So this will come off, and for CO2, there's this little piece of plastic you want to make sure you don't lose. That helps with the seal. With nitrogen, you don't have the same piece. It actually is set up a little differently, where this will go like into a connection on the canister. And I have a new one, which you can either go to like a air gas store, or you can go to like a local brewing shop to get these tanks swapped out. The one I go to just depends what's open. I have an air gas about 5 minutes down the road, but they're typically like a Monday through Friday schedule, whereas the brewing shop I go to, it's a little bit further, but they're open on Sundays. So I just go to whatever works out best for my schedule. So to hook this back up, you'll take that little plastic ring, put it into the regulator, and then turn it clockwise. Then you'll just take the wrench and tighten it up. You want to try to keep it so the meters are kind of upright, so you'll be able to read them when it's hooked up to the keg. So that's on there. I always like to check it for leaks, so what I have is a little bit of soapy dishwater here. I'll just kind of put it on top. It also doesn't hurt to put it on the actual hose seals as well. And if you see any bubbling coming up, you'll know it's not tight enough. But I guess, you should actually first open it up. So I'm doing that right now. And I'll turn this up a little bit just to see if any leaks show up. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and keg up the kombucha. All right, so next step is to keg the kombucha I brewed. But before I do, I wanted to run you through the type of keg I'm using. So this is a 5-gallon Corny or Cornelius keg, which is a ball lock. So the reason it's called that is because this coupler I have coming off the regulator has little balls that will lock this coupler onto this shaft on the keg when you push it down and let it clamp down. So that's where that gets this name. There's also pin lock, which is very similar. I'm not sure if there's really any major differences. You'll just want to make sure you get the kind that's compatible with the couplers your keg came with. There's also one thing to be aware of if you're going to be brewing commercially and selling to bars or restaurants. The standard is a Sankey keg. So instead of having this opening where you can pour your kombucha into, it's more of a closed system. It's not as easy to open up for a home brewer, which is why these work so well. But just one thing to keep in mind, if you're brewing commercially, you might want to look into those before you go this route. So the way this works, there is one post for in, one post for out. So I'll actually hook my regulator CO2 up to the inlet, and then I'll have the hose hooked up to the tap faucets going on the out. However, the one thing I would recommend is to get this carbonation lid. So the way this keg would typically work is you have the CO2 coming in this post, but in doing so, it only basically has the CO2 coming in from the very top. The benefit of this is the CO2 comes all the way in and goes all the way down to the bottom of the keg, and then the CO2 bubbles dissipate up. And I found it gets carbonated much more quickly. Before I had this, it might take a few days to get the right carbonation. But with this lid, I generally get it where I want it to be after just one night.